Hello, and welcome to Exposition, a podcast produced by the Division of Social and Human Sciences, Northeast Campus, Tarrant County College. Prepare to be engaged, enlightened, and informed. Today's topic.
Hello. Today's topic is going to be the movie Glory. This is Dr. Karen Wisely from the History Department at Northeast Campus of Tarrant County College. I guess I'm your host, and I'm here with...
And I'm Samantha Elkins, also for the History Department up here at Northeast Campus.
You know, one day I hope to do that smoothly.
Impossible.
Today is not that day. All right, so we are going to talk today about the movie Glory. What I like to do at the beginning of all of these is give the log line or a brief description of the movie and then talk about the people who are in it in terms of that I usually it checks with my brain because where have I seen these people before? So all right, the log line for Glory is this. Robert Gould Shaw leads the U.S. Civil War's first all-black volunteer company, fighting prejudices from both his own Union Army and the Confederates. Glory was released in 1989. It was directed by Edward Zwick. It stars Matthew Broderick as Robert Gould Shaw from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mean, what else can there be? Denzel Washington plays Private Tripp from so many great movies. People probably remember him from Remember the Titans. That's on TV like every other day. Or Training Day, where he won an Academy Award. Or maybe Malcolm X. But my personal favorite Denzel Washington movie is called Man on Fire. And boy, is that violent. He won an Oscar for this role as well. So he's a double Oscar winner.
Oh, yeah.
Morgan Freeman plays Sergeant Major John Rawlins, and he was the voice of God. And again, I feel like I'm saying this a lot, but he actually was the voice of God in Bruce Almighty and Evan Almighty, and he has been in a ton of other things. Carrie Elwes, who is Major Cabot Forbes, Wesley in Princess Bride, and nothing else. All right, and finally there's Andre Braugher, who plays Corporal Thomas Searles, and he is probably best known for Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
He's Captain Holtz, and he looks so different.
So much younger. This was 1989, my lord. It's
I'm not going to talk about it.
It's approaching. It's like 30 some odd years ago. So
33 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. So
we went back to the 80s. Finally.
Gosh. Yeah.
In this series.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll get there again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that floored me a little bit. So, all right. So,
how about I start with you? What were your thoughts, like watching Glory and historical accuracy, good, bad, anything? Yeah.
I've always been a fan of this movie, and part of the reason is because one of my professors just absolutely adored this movie.
That helps.
Yeah, and she spoke of it frequently, and it's pretty fairly accurate. It is definitely gritty and emotional. I guess I'd seen it a long time ago, and when I watched it again so that we could talk about it, it had been a while, and so I forgot all of the different places where I was going to cry.
Yeah.
So very emotional. It's mostly true to form. I mean, obviously there's going to be some problems with it, and we'll talk about those certainly. And I think it's an important film as well. So I love this movie, and I think it is really well put together, really well acted, and you know the message is good. So yeah. So what about you? What are your overall
I
impressions?
really like this movie too. Like it's one of those things that I had watched it before. I had seen this one before, and I watched it literally last night. And man, was I bawling at the end. No shame saying that. Which, by the way, spoilers on all of these. Hopefully by this point, people know that. But man, it was one of those things that I had forgotten how good they did, really focusing more on the African American struggle than making it all. It has a little bit of the white savior complex, a little bit, but I mean, it helps that it's not a happy ending, per se, you know.
No.
So it's not really savior.
No.
It's got a little bit of that white complex. Let's focus on his heroism versus the African Americans. But I think at the end of the day, even he's focused more on them. And I think it does a really good job of still more of it focusing more on the African Americans fighting themselves for these rights and for these battles. And even doing that, like when it's making it kind of like historically inaccurate, like a moment ago we were talking about a little bit that there's this great scene in it that they the African Americans are not going to be paid as much as white soldiers. And they go Trip, which is Denzel Washington, starts being like, you're not going to do that. You're not going to accept that. Nah. And then they all decide, no, we're going to tear up our checks. We're not going to accept that. Like we should get paid just as much as a white man and everything. We can take a bullet just as well as them. And Shaw's character joins in on them. And the historical reality is actually Shaw's character encouraged them to do this from the beginning. But I actually like that they made it historically inaccurate to show just how African Americans were in charge of fighting for their own rights and everything. That in the movie, it started more by Trip, Denzel Washington's character, than Shaw's. Shaw just joins in.
Right. Yeah. Giving the soldiers agency is great. Also, I guess I forgot about it starting in Antietam.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like I just said that weird. Antietam.
Antietam.
Yes. Antietam, of course, is like the bloodiest day in U.S. history. More people died on that one day in that battle than any other day in our history, and I think it still is, even with 9/11 or 9/11. It's very close.
It's
Those
very
two
close.
are.
I think it is still more.
Yeah, and certainly if you add in the people who died in the next couple of days from their injuries, you would definitely have a larger number. And Shaw was not he was no hero in this. He in fact was a bit of a coward and kind of almost played dead. And
he gets like a little bit of a cut almost on his neck, and I think it's supposed to be a bullet grazed him. And then he lies down on the ground and he's like trying to take cover, and then he doesn't get back up until like the battle's way away from him.
The battle's way over, and they are picking up the dead, and Morgan Freeman kicks him to see if he's still alive, and he is, and then he gets up and walks away, and it's like, that's not a great look for the hero of our movie. But I think I liked that, because the next scene has him in with his family, kind of, and he's from a well-off family. But I think the thing that I really liked about Shaw as a hero is, yes, we all immediately see that he's not heroic.
No.
But he also has a good relationship with Thomas, who is a friend of his. And so we
And
don't
he's a
have
black
to.
man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's Andre Brower. And so we don't have to see that redemption arc. That he was racist and because of this time he spent with these guys, he's going to see the light or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't have that in this. He is comfortable with black people right away,
Yeah.
and so you don't have that.
Redemption of, oh, do I really want to? Oh, yeah, these black people are people. Like we've seen that story, so many times.
Yes, so many.
Which ironically, historically speaking, that's actually probably what the story was. Because originally, when he's told he's going to be over the 54th Regiment, he refuses, and he was really aware of like his career could get hurt by being over a group of black soldiers. And eventually takes it. Whereas in the movie, he literally goes outside. He thinks for all of 1 minute, and then
if that,
and then he turns to Carrie Ewell's character. I just see him as Wesley.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, you can just call him Wesley.
Yeah, he's Wesley. He's Wesley. Let's be honest. And he turns to him and he's like, "I'm gonna take it."
And Wesley said, "As you wish." No.
We're getting crossovers. Gosh.
Just kidding.
He does not say that. That's just what we all wanted him to say.
Yes, exactly.
In that moment. But he actually is more the one that has that kind of
like,
story of like going from I don't know about these black soldiers, and then by
this
the end,
isn't going to be good for our career. Yeah,
he's defending them even more ardently than Shaw does. So it was nice to see that more as the background, and not even be like one of the main things comparatively to everything else.
Yeah. A lack of that redemptive. And we also do have we have bad guys that maybe aren't bad, and we have good guys that maybe aren't that great. The guy that comes in to train the soldiers, the Irish guy.
Yeah, it's the Irish guy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. He's one of those gray area kind of guys. At first, I'm like, I don't know about this dude. And they even drew attention to the fact that he was an Irish guy, and Irish people and
are really racist.
Really didn't like black people at the time. And so, it's like, well, I don't know what to think about this guy. And then the whole whipping scene with Denzel, which was, devastating.
Yeah.
And, might I say, brilliantly acted.
Oh, yeah.
That probably won him the Oscar there. The eye contact, the unbroken eye contact, and the one tear.
Oh, the one tear, yeah. And it's just like,
oh my God.
But like he looks angry even as the one tear goes down his face, and you're just like,
oh my God.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. That's powerful acting there. That is.
Although not accurate. I will say, like, it was great because it was showing like what, like if flogging had been allowed in the Army, which by that point it was not allowed, and actually somewhere else out west they tried to flog someone, and like the whole troop revolted against them. So I'm like, okay, so that wouldn't have happened. But if it had been allowed, it kind of shows you like the struggle African Americans were going through as soldiers comparatively to white Americans. That they faced so much more than just becoming a soldier and just the normal hardships and that.
And I think that was also a telling moment because Matthew Broderick can't ever look. I wrote down their names so that I would be able to know what their character names were and that I would call them by that. But yet, still, it's Matthew Broderick.
You can't look at him and not go, oh, it's Ferris Bueller. It's Matthew Broderick. Like, it's just,
yeah.
Shaw.
And Ferris Bueller was only a couple of years ahead of us. So it's in the same. I mean, he hasn't changed a whole lot. But Matthew Broderick's character, I think, was because of his friendship with Thomas and Andre Brower, that he had a friendship with a black man, but he was a free black man, a well-educated, and you know, he wore very fancy suits and things like this. And in that scene, when he okays the punishment, and you know, let's set aside the historical accuracy for a second, because I think the important part of that scene was when they took Denzel's shirt off, and his back had already been scarred from being beaten so many times, because Denzel's character was an escaped slave. So I think that was sort of like an awakening for Matthew Broderick's character, because he had been kind of sort of treating these guys like they were Thomas, you know,
that they were free black men from the North,
and that they had, and that, you know, that all of their bravado and all of their, you know, undiscipline is not acceptable, and why can't they get it together? And then I think that was kind of like, oh, I'm dealing with different people, and so I think that's important. And it's also important because isn't that when Wesley tells him that it was God. And Morgan Freeman he told him
it's God. Oh God. Yeah, there we go.
Morgan Freeman told him that the reason that because he was being punished for desertion, and the reason that he had left is because he didn't have shoes.
Yeah, he needed some new shoes, and they show like the taking off the shoes, and it's my
God, yeah, like
yeah, which I appreciate, because that part with shoes and the lack of supplies, that was historically accurate kind of thing.
Yeah, and so that spurred Shaw.
Yeah, we have to think about this really hard. Their character names, it spurred Shaw
to bust in and take the supplies that were rightfully meant for his unit, but were being withheld because of a racist supply clerk.
Yep.
So that was a very, again, moving scene. There's also the scene when they're marching. Where are they marching through the South?
They marched through. They marched through a few different cities. At one point, they marched through the South. But earlier they marched through like Boston or something like that. I can't remember where it was.
Yeah. The early one, yeah. But when they marched through the South, and there's these little black children.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Morgan Freeman tells them, you know.
Yeah, we ran away as escaped slaves, but we come back wearing the uniform, and.
Yeah, and that's chilling too. Just as a side note, I looked at IMDb, which turns out was a huge mistake. And I watched this movie, and I watched it, and I paid attention, this is saying something, because for a lot of movies, I only pay kind of half attention, you know, I'm doing something else or whatever. But I watched this, and I was paying attention. And then I went to IMDb to look something up, and they have this section called Goofs. And during that scene, they talk about all the people who are wearing 1980s style digital watches.
Oh, gosh. I was looking for the watches, too. I missed them.
And that's what I was going to say. I like rewound, and I'm like, where are these watches? I couldn't see any of them. I don't know where they were. They were pretty well hidden, and so that makes me wonder about the people who are writing these goof sections. Like, what are you doing? Are you
stopping every single frame?
You stop action frame watching it, which is not really watching it, you know, just to see some kind of inconsistencies. Just enjoy the movie, you muggle. So anyway, I didn't see the watches. It certainly wasn't distracting to me.
It was only distracting to me in that you had told me about that before, so I was looking for them during the film a few times, and I would never find them. And I was like, I was almost disappointed because I was ready to find these watches, and they weren't there. And I was like, oh, okay.
I too was disappointed. I think I'm going to have to go back and find
the actual scene where we see it, just out of curiosity.
All right. So they are not being put into action, and that is a sticking point for everyone. Everyone wants to see some action, and so then they are given an opportunity, and it is the worst kind of action. I would say.
Man. Yeah, it was the movie does a good job of not straying away from how racist the Northerners were. Even the ones who are, against slavery and everything like that. And so they meet a whole other contingency of black soldiers, but I would say soldiers in quotation marks kind of thing. And they're not being treated like soldiers. They're being treated basically as a tool to basically punish. They call them secessions? Secesh. Oh, those secesh need to be punished, which is interesting seeing that this time around, because I couldn't help but compare it to today when people go, oh, illegals and stuff like that, rather very much dehumanizing the so-called enemy and everything. And so it was kind of one of those moments that I was like, oh, crud. But yeah, they go into that town, and the other soldiers, quote, are basically ordered to just pillage the town that they've already taken. It's not like there's Confederate troops or anything there. It's not a battleground. It's just literally
it's just civilians. Yeah.
Yeah. And even one of them starts getting in a fight with a white woman, and the commanding officer, who's white, who's Union, literally shoots him for hitting a white woman.
White woman. Yeah. Who was. Because he was stealing something and she was trying to take it back. The stealing was fine, but don't mess with white women is the message.
And then he even says, oh, yeah, but it was her fault to begin with, because, oh, man, I can't believe she made me do that. If that Sesesh hadn't started that. It's like, oh, my gosh. And so then Shaw's troops are basically ordered, you need to burn the town down.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to.
No.
But he is told that if he doesn't, he will be...
Yeah, he'll be court-martialed, and even though he would win that marshal...
But they would remove him from that unit, and he would be stuck with the terrible people as their leader. And he looks at his unit, and they were like...
Don't change who are there. So he orders them to do it, and that actually did happen for the 54th Regiment. They actually did... get involved in that, and I want to say that Shaw did say he didn't want to, but
so
it kind of tells you some of the bad realities of war, and even that's not even as bad as raping and pillaging. It's the pillaging part more so than anything else. But
they stayed away from the raping part, which I think that was probably a conscious choice.
And I mean, we see that with the oh my gosh, people talk about Sherman's March to the Sea and everything like that, and he actually had very strict rules about a lot of that. So we don't actually get I'm not saying none, but we don't get as much with the raping and pillaging to a certain point later in the war. But the fact that we even see it at all and they don't move away from it, it was kind of important to see the realities of war.
Right. If you watch Gone with the Wind, you would see a completely different story of Sherman's March. But no, it's obviously
that's not a historically accurate movie. By the way,
we really need to do that.
Oh gosh.
Anyway, all right. So let's I guess fast forward a little bit towards the end where they are going to volunteer to. A suicide mission, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a known suicide mission, and they volunteer for it. They'd only seen real action, fighting against soldiers. I think it was 2 days before in the movie. I don't know if that's they had a significant. It's small, but a significant number of casualties, killed, wounded, missing, all of that. But. And they had apparently not slept at all in the interim, and they are going to. The attack is on Fort Wagner, which is a really well fortified Confederate holdout there, and the people who were going to be the lead
in the attack was basically a suicide mission because they were so well fortified, and you're running straight into the teeth of those fortifications. And
the hope was just to distract them long enough that basically reinforcements could actually come and
from the other side. Yeah. So he volunteers. Shaw volunteers his men, and they are super excited about it.
Yeah.
And, there isn't a whole lot of dissension or anything like, what are you doing, man? You don't see, I fancy myself to be a patriot and to have, America, heck yeah, kind of attitude. But I don't know if I don't know. You're
looking at Fort Wagner and the way they present it,
yeah, take this flag, march right into those people shooting at you, and be like, no.
Yeah, no,
Yeah. And to their credit, none of them did that.
No, they all stick with it. It's a very moving scene. That whole ending scene, them literally marching into ongoing fire, that they're trying to go up the dunes, the sand dunes at one point, and Shaw's like, charge, and Shaw gets up first, and then you see
him get hit
times. Shaw does not make it. We don't technically know how many. I mean, I know that in historical reality, we know about 50% of them died.
Yeah.
The movie, I've seen it complained about when I was looking at reviews and stuff like that, that it comes off almost like more a higher percent dies, but then it does say in the little ending card that only about 50% perished and everything like that. But part of it's the characters that we've seen.
Yeah,
we're definitely seeing some of them die because, of course, right after Shaw, we get Denzel Washington
picking up the flag and urging the men to continue on, and
so we know those two fall.
I don't
the
remember
other ones
seeing.
We don't see.
Yeah, we don't see Morgan Freeman. We don't.
They run forward and they get into the fort, and then they're met with that. There's literal cannons right at them, and there's this picture moment of oh, something. I'm not gonna curse, but you can know what I'm gonna think then. Oh, something.
Sewage.
Oh, sewage. And it's boom, the boom of the cannons, and then it kind of goes to the end, and we see Shaw and Tripp being buried.
Yeah.
But we don't see what happened to the other characters. But we did see Thomas get stuck in the back with a.
Well, he was already wounded, and and shouldn't probably have been still continuing to fight, but he insisted that he stay with his unit and continue. So I want to tell the story about the end. The Shaw being buried in a mass grave with the rest of his men, who are all black. And the Confederates who were doing the burying, did it on purpose as an insult to Robert Gould Shaw. And so what was the reaction to his parents? Because they were going to offer to, exhume him and move him to Arlington or someplace, with honors. And his parents...
Yeah, his dad, I think, says something along the lines of, there would be no greater honor than for him to stay buried with his men, who he died alongside. He is this great... I don't have the exact quote, but...
So it was that's...
And his parents were abolitionists.
Yes.
So it very much that fits. But it... Yeah. Oh, man. Tears and crying at the end. Cause,
very much crying, yes.
Yeah. No, it's kind of... I don't want to say it's a happy movie, but it's not really a sad movie. It's just... No. They talk about no one can win this war or something at one point, and I think that's kind of what it's supposed to symbolize, at the end, that, even when they win, they lose so much.
Yeah, that everybody lost in that war.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, it isn't happy, but it also isn't... It doesn't leave you empty.
No. inspiring?
It might be inspiring. Inspiring might be the word. It's been so long since I felt inspired. Vaguely remember that. Again, I love this movie. I can't say enough about it. It is really a well-made movie, and it does hold up pretty well. It's 30-some years old. I don't want to do the math.
33.
Okay.
I already did it.
All right, cool. 33 years old. I don't think that they could make it any better today.
Yeah. I mean, because every time, like, I would look at, like, historical inaccuracies with, like, the 54th Regiment, it's things like, okay, the 54th Regiment was really the governor, I think Governor Andrew of Massachusetts kind of pet project. So they actually were really well supplied. They had nice shoes. The majority of the men that were in the regiment were actually, like, more like Thomas, that they were free northern black men who joined. They were not former enslaved. In fact, they're pretty sure Thomas might be based a little bit on one of Frederick Douglass' sons was in the regiment. So they think that might have been kind of the inspiration for that, and especially Frederick Douglass, got to be really well written and well read.
Right, yeah.
But, so, like, they don't do that, but actually what they do is, like, they look at the other African-American troops, quite frankly, and the issues that they faced, especially with their background, and that they did face, issues with supplies and so much in that. And so it strays away from, like, the historical realities of the 54th, but gives us the historical realities of black troops.
Yeah, broader. Yeah.
Much broader. And so I honestly, like, I like that because it gives us more of their story. And it doesn't even... I mean, we still do get Thomas, who is, well written and seen as the worst soldier in the unit and stuff, and so it's very nice. You get more.
Yeah, so, you get an amalgamation of what various experiences were.
So I didn't need it to be 100% accurate to that specific regiment because they were true to form for that time.
Yeah, and again, that's that is kind of standard procedure in your historic-based movies, that they take the real story and sometimes they add a character that didn't exist so that they can continue the narrative through different pieces of it, and sometimes they morph a bunch of characters that did exist and put them all together, even when they were not all together, just so that they can tell one story but cover all of these different aspects of it. So it isn't, I'm not bothered by that either. I mean, it isn't, we're not billing this as the official...
It's not a documentary of the 54th Regiment.
It's not the official regimental history of the 54th, the Massachusetts 54th. So it isn't. I'm not bothered by that at all. I would rather that you show all of those different kinds of experiences of different types of black soldiers.
Yeah.
So, that's. Yeah, I think that the inaccuracies that are there bother me less in this movie than in a lot of them.
Yeah, no. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't shy away from, like, racism of the Northerners. It doesn't put things in a completely black and white. Like, a lot of times the bad guys, quote unquote, in it aren't necessarily even the Confederates that they're fighting. It's more within the North.
Union soldiers, yes.
Yeah, and so it's more about the social aspects of the time here. So, like, honestly, like, I guess we jump right to the recommendation. Do we recommend this? I would say yeah.
I would, outstandingly recommend this for anybody to watch. And honestly, like, some movies I'm like, well, I would recommend you watch it because it's important. Well, this one is important, but it also is not going to, like, destroy your world. Like, you can watch it on a weekend and not be, like, depressed for the entire weekend.
No.
It isn't, it is sad.
Have a box of tissues.
Yeah. People die.
Yeah.
It is sad, but it isn't unrelentingly just terrible. You know, there is inspiration. There is hope.
Yeah, there's almost a redemption in them saying, no, we're going to take this suicide. We're proving ourselves of this time period, whether it was these black soldiers or Shaw, when you're looking at him at the beginning of the film, kind of being almost a coward, kind of like, and then the end of the film, him going, no, I'm going to.
Yeah, with my men, yes.
Yeah, so it's.
Yeah, so I think it's an excellent film. Absolutely one of my all-time favorites.
We're not doing a rating system, but 2 thumbs up. 100%.
We're going to have to devise something.
We'll figure out some sort of rating system. So if you got any suggestions, let us know.
Yes, please. Please. All right. I think that about wraps it up.
Thanks. You for listening to us today.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the movies. No, I think that's probably trademarked. Please, please don't sue me. Thank you.